Good evening, everybody. This is the last first Monday of the season 2020-21, and I'm very proud that we are still here. This has been a tough time for everybody with the pandemic, and we've had to be very nimble to figure out how to manage that. What we learned early on was that we were going to be pre-recording all of the performances, assembled then and then streamed on the traditional first Monday night. We've had some wonderful performances, and tonight is absolutely no exception. But when I was thinking about tonight as the last of this very, hopefully, unique season, it occurred to me that the star of the show, certainly not me, and to a degree the performers, but the real star of the show is Jordan Hall. And that's what I thought about as I was working to assemble a program tonight. Jordan Hall is such a special space, and it's been here for a long time. It was opened in the autumn of 1903. And the fun thing I'll tell you is that the conservatory itself, the building, was opened in 1902, and there was no Jordan Hall. Where I'm sitting right now was an airspace. There was, in the middle, just an empty patio, if you want to put it that way, and there was no Jordan Hall. And then it was built. I'm sure it was all designed and everything, but that's the way it was with the construction. And from the very first night that Jordan Hall opened, with all of the fancy people of Boston here listening to the Boston Symphony play in Jordan Hall, it was the first concert, the word was in the press, this hall is unequaled the world over. And so when we are in Jordan Hall, we are in a sacred place, a place that is devoted to sound and to beauty. What is really amazing about this hall is that you can do so many different kinds of sound in here, and they all work. Anything from one year in First Monday, I started a program with keyboards with a clavichord, which in most places you can barely hear. We could hear it here. And it ended up with a big piece by Karl-Heinz Stockhausen for piano and loudspeakers. And all of those things in between, like harpsichord, forte piano, regular piano, all of them worked. So we are now finishing our 36th season, and there have been many, many different kinds of sounds here. I want just to say a word about how this hall began. It was built, it was opened, and then everybody came here. The great pianist Arthur Rubinstein, I think it was about 1906, made his first tour of the United States, and about Jordan Hall, he said it reminded him of the great halls of Europe. Not long after, Pablo Casals was here. When I was a student across the river at Harvard in 1958, I was in the audience for the first concert here of Rostropovich, a recital on Sunday afternoon. And that's sort of where we are enjoying all of these wonderful things. So we'll get a little bit into the details of it. But that's kind of my preamble for what we're doing. The first piece we're going to hear tonight tests the hall in a very special way. It's by the Venetian composer Giovanni Gabrieli, who was born around, well, they're confused about when he was born, but it was probably 1554 or 1556. In any case, right in the middle of the 16th century. And he lived in a city that had a church that still is there and is known everywhere as not only being a source of great beauty, but as the place of where great music was made. It's called Basilica San Marco, St. Mark's Basilica. It's built in Byzantine style, and Gabrieli grew up in Venice. When he was about the age of most of our students, he went off to study in Munich from the great Orlando di Lasso, who was a great composer of choral music of that time. Not long after he came back from Germany, Giovanni got the job as being an organist at the church. And then 2 years later, after the retirement of his uncle, he became the chief composer of St. Mark's. And he lived into the beginning of the 17th century. During that time, he noticed that there was something really special about the interior of that church. And that was that it had 2 choir lofts and 2 organs that were on opposite sides of the hall. And this gave rise to his writing music that took advantage of the antiphonal effect of music coming from here and coming from there. Several years ago, we did some pieces by Gabrieli, including the one we're doing tonight. And Charles Peltz, is the leader of our wind ensemble, got 4 trombones in one side of the balcony and 4 trumpets in the other side, and they did 3 pieces by Gabrieli. Because of things this year, it's not possible really for us to put those instruments up in the balcony. But the stage has been extended, and what you're going to hear now is one of the great pieces of that period called Sonata Pianoforte. That means that there are going to be brass instruments playing at one side of the stage, the other side of the stage, and what they're going to play, which is about 6-7 minutes long, is sometimes loud and sometimes soft. And I'm very, very grateful to James Markey, who was ahead of our brass department now from the Boston Symphony, that he's put together a performance of this, which is going to be not 4 trumpets and 4 trombones, but including French horns and other brass instruments. And that's what we're going to hear now. So now you've heard what brass instruments from the period just before the Baroque or the Renaissance can do in Jordan Hall. It's great, isn't it? But I want you to taste many different kinds of sound tonight. And the next one is not simply that it's a different sound, but it's a different circumstance. It's the chamber singers led by Erica Washburn. And we have some music that we've borrowed from a concert they did last fall around Christmas time, including all kinds of festive holiday music. And they're not on the stage, because if you've read anything about the pandemic, it's the air coming out of your mouth that can very often carry the disease. So we have to keep each singer 12 feet apart from another singer. You can't do that on the stage with as many voices. So we took the entire downstairs of Jordan Hall and positioned people all over the hall, and Erica conducts them from the stage. The first piece, Couldn't Hear Nobody Pray. It's an old spiritual from either the late 1800s or early 1900s. Now, what's interesting to me about this is it not only is a wonderful piece, and it's a wonderful performance, but there is a history behind it. In the 1890s, there was a black composer named Harry Burleigh, who was in New York and actually met and was involved with Antonin Dvorak. So he's the first person to have made a setting for chorus of this one. But the one tonight is made by somebody else, and that's somebody that Erica found, and his name is Stephen L. Hayes. And he made an arrangement which he did at Tuskegee College in the South, and she got that from him, and that's the first piece we're going to hear. I'll tell you about the second piece so you could listen to them one right after the other. This is a piece with a lot of people talking, but there's no text in the program because the text is nonsense. They're making sounds, but with no meaning. And the composer is from Finland, and his name is Jaakko Montijärvi. And this is a piece called El Jambo. Now, what does that mean? I actually found out. El Jambo, Jambo is the name of a Swedish folk dance that was popular around 100 years ago. And what he's done is to take the rhythm of the Jambo and to create a really fun piece, which is only about 3 or 4 minutes long. And Erica Washburn is including that in a program she's putting together for K through 12. And this is really going to get the kids going. So that's our section now dealing with the human voice. Let's enjoy it now.
Down yonder by my
I've tried as much as I can over the years to find interesting jazz to include because this school has a great jazz department. And tonight I have something very special to share with you. Last October, the jazz department, led by Ken Shaphorst, did an evening devoted to the 100th birth year anniversary of the great American jazz artist Charlie Parker. Charlie Parker was a black American born in St. Louis and who started playing young and finally settled on the instrument that he's known for, alto saxophone. And he was absolutely a creative person who just took jazz in a new direction along with others around him. He was in the forefront of the development of what we call bebop. And he was involved with all kinds of other artists in that time. And bebop is something that not only has a lot of energy in it, but it was really virtuoso stuff. He was flying all over the instrument like crazy, and also with very, very extended changes of harmony. And that defined a whole new era. And at one point in his life, because he was also very interested in classical music, he decided he wanted to do a group of songs which he would transcribe and make into his version of classical popular songs. The first half of the concert was with string players and French horn and other wind instruments to really reproduce what Charlie Parker had done for that combination. And the piece that they did last fall that I chose is a very famous standard. It's called April in Paris. Now we had a March French concert, so that was not April in Paris, it was March. And now we have a May concert, which is also not April, so it's kind of in between. But that was written by a wonderful composer named Vernon Duke. Now I have something interesting to share with you. I got to know Vernon Duke. Vernon Duke actually was Russian, and his born name was Vladimir Dukelsky. And when he came to writing popular music, he was a big success at it, he used an American equivalent. He called himself Vernon Duke. I'm from Los Angeles, and in my last years of Los Angeles, when I was a young professional, I got a call that there was something called the Society for Forgotten Music, led by a man named Vladimir Dukelsky. I didn't know who he was. He lived in a lavish, beautiful house in the Pacific Palisades area overlooking the Pacific Ocean. And I was invited to come there with a group that was going to record the Hummel Piano Quintet. As it happened, I had a chance to meet and talk with Mr. Dukelsky, and he was a very, very educated man, a very interesting fellow, and sadly nothing ever came of the recording. The second piece is actually not an original piece by Charlie Parker, but is an homage to him. We had a wonderful jazz pianist on our faculty here. His name was Jackie Byard. And Jackie was a force of nature, and he was a hugely successful teacher and a very great pianist. And he could get around the piano, like a jet airplane. I mean, it was whatever. He could do anything. He could play any style. So he made a piece in homage to Charlie Parker called Extreme. And we're going to hear that piece in big band format, which is the way Jackie wrote it. And those are the two pieces we're going to hear for jazz tonight. So enjoy them. So I was president of New England Conservatory from 1983 to 1996. And I had known Jordan Hall since I was an undergraduate at Harvard. The first time I was in here was 1956. And there was no mistaking the fact that Jordan Hall was getting pretty run down. There were all of these beautiful gargoyles on the edge. Some of them were just crumbling plaster. The seats were tilting. There was no air conditioning. We could only use the hall barely from September, which sometimes even then it was 100 degrees in here, until beginning of May. Obviously, this is something that was not the way it should be. And so, working with the trustees, we decided that we were going to raise money for the restoration of Jordan Hall. And I want you to hear that word very carefully, restoration, not renovation, because this is a great hall, and it was from the beginning, and it was just run down. And my determination in leading this restoration process was to restore it to the beauty it was there at the beginning, and to make it comfortable again, and to make it a 12-month hall, and with updated lighting, updated rebuilt chairs, all of those sorts of things. And we finally figured out that it was going to be done in the summer of 1995. But we were worried, because several years before that, Carnegie Hall had a big public relations problem, because it was discovered that when they restored the stage of Carnegie Hall and took up the wood, that they had put a layer of concrete underneath there, and everybody was convinced that it damaged the acoustic. We were determined that we would not have that problem, and so what we decided to do was that in the summer of 1994, one year advanced that, we would do the floor first to be sure that we hadn't ruined the acoustic. We did some excavation, we found all kinds of things with it, but the most amazing thing we found was that underneath the stage was a slab of concrete. That's the way it was built. This great hall with its great acoustic had concrete underneath the floor. So the next thing we did was, he said, well, the hall was 1903, and the wood on the floor was southern hard pine from the Carolinas. We researched and we found that there were factory beams from the Carolinas where the buildings had been built about the time this hall was built. And we managed to get that wood and have it milled into the wood that's on the floor today. We replaced the floor. We discovered that we hadn't ruined the acoustic, and then we came to the final big push. So a lot of things happened that summer, and I can't tell you about all of them, but we got air conditioning put in with huge apparatus on the roof. We got it put in a way so that nobody would see where it was coming in. It was hidden. I'll leave that for another day. We decided that absolutely we had to have the chairs rebuilt. The chairs had been built for this hall and patented, and we were able, therefore, to get the drawings from the patent office in Washington for how they were built so that we could reproduce damaged parts of the chairs. The last concert in Jordan Hall before the big restoration was a First Monday concert. It was May 1st, 1995. And the last sound that was made before the reopening was the great piece of Igor Stravinsky called Les Noces, the wedding, which ends with chimes like wedding bells. And that's the end of the piece. So all summer long when we were watching this, all I could do was to hear those chimes resonating in the hall. Actually, there's something that I completely forgot about when it came time to honor Jordan Hall. That is the great friendship institutions in Boston have with one another, and in particular, now called GBH, it used to be WGBH, the place that does public television and public radio. They have a program on television that still exists called This Old House. Probably many of you know it. It's where a house is taken somewhere and a team of workers redesign, rebuild the house, bring it up to speed, bring it up to current code and all of that. And we got to talking with our friends at GBH and said, wouldn't it be wonderful if we could do something about the restoration of Jordan Hall that you could film? They agreed. And they created a 1-hour program called This Old Hall. I hadn't seen it for all these years, since 1995, until about a month ago. And I said, oh, we've got to have that film to show again, and I hope that will happen. But at least for tonight, we have 2 excerpts, of each one of about 3 minutes, to talk about 2 features of the hall and show the workmen repairing them. One is to repair crumbling plaster. Wherever there is decorative molding, it's mostly made of plaster. And I'm going to let the workman tell you all about it, but basically what he's done is they've made molds of that and cast new things. But that's the first thing. And right after that, we're going to talk about all of this fancy gilt everywhere in the hall, all of these gold leaf things. And we have a workman in this film who is repairing it. And he has a wonderful story to tell you about what is really there, what it took to do it, and a note of sadness. He said, people are not doing this anymore. This may be my last job. I didn't have a chance to follow that up, but it is exciting to see these workmen at work. So here are those clips from This Old Hall.
He showed us how to restore damaged plaster with a combination of high-tech material and old-world craftsmanship.
No plasterer has been this close to this ceiling in 80 years. Look at it, it's beautiful. And they probably won't be up here for another 80 after we get finished with it. Look at it, a beautiful section of piece here of ornamental plaster called egg and dot. As you can see, it repeats throughout the entire coffers. The egg and dot signifying birth and death. Beautiful piece of stuff. Downstairs, where the audience sits, and you look up here, you'd never think that this was this condition. It probably looks good from down below. But up here, as you can see, this is completely deteriorated. This is a disaster. I mean, actual chunks of plaster have fallen from this. It's amazing. Look at it, the lather's all rotted over the years. And we're gonna have to cut all this out and replace the entire area. You've got a cause of this because it's constant water damage, dripping constantly over the years. A leak in the roof, condensation probably, with no air conditioning up in there. You get that water, it builds up, and what happens? Things start to rust and deteriorate. And how are we gonna fix it? We're gonna cut this entire section out. We're gonna make brand new casts of plaster, and we're gonna put them all back up in place, just like the original. And the way we're gonna do this is right here, through this mold, a negative mold that we made of an existing good area, right up here, of the ornament, the egg and dot again, with the existing surround coffered sections, okay? We made this mold up in place, took it down. As you can see, this is a flexible silicone mold. We take this back to the shop, use this section with the ornamentation in it, you know, the negative egg and dot, cast new plaster pieces in it. In the old days, these molds were probably made out of a glue mold, which was constantly used, or a gelatinous type mold. They'd probably only get a couple of castings out of it. But we were able to take something like this with the high-tech material that we're using. We'll probably get 100 casts out of this if we want to. And then we're going to put it all back up in place, just like it was originally. It's going to be all attached mechanically in with plaster. When we take this out, look at this. You got your flexible mold, and you got a beautiful piece of ornate plaster bracket. The painters are going to come along, they're going to paint this up, they're going to leaf it, and they're going to make it look like it was right back in 1902.
Don Amaro is a gilder, a specialist in the nearly lost art of applying and restoring gold leaf. Many of the crowning touches on Jordan Hall's newly resplendent interior are his.
Way below from an orchestra seat, this looks like gold leaf, when actually it's silver that's been painted with a gold glaze. It's a tribute to the artistry and craftsmanship of our forebears that it was done 92 years ago, and it looks so beautiful. They, of course, would use silver leaf because they would never use the gold because of the cost, and after 92 years, it just looks beautiful. All it needed was a good cleaning. The leaf that we use is an aluminum leaf that's probably about 1/20th the thickness of the household tinfoil. It's been slightly adhered to a piece of paper, and we simply press it into the size, making sure that we don't have any holidays or holes, places that we've missed. And we just simply press other pieces in to fill up any of the voids. We don't have any holes. It's burnished with a large brush. Make sure that we have all the holes filled. And we're using the aluminum leaf, being frugal now, instead of using the silver. This will be painted with a green glaze. Glaze meaning a translucent paint that allows some of the brilliance of the leaf to shine through the paint, giving the desired effect that the decorators would like. Unfortunately, leafing seems to be a dying art form. People seem to want to do it quickly and save money by giving all these beautiful service a coat of gold paint, which is a shame that they would want to hide some of this as beautiful as this is. There is a certain amount of sadness doing work like this. This probably will be my last job of this type. And gold leafing is becoming such a dying art form that people just don't want to spend the money. But even though there's a certain sadness, there is also some satisfaction that the people that will be coming to the theater will see some of the work that we've done and will enjoy it for the next 92 years.
Now, most of the time for these last 36 years, what you've heard at First Monday concerts are what loosely would be called chamber music. And tonight's concert is going to end with one of the greatest pieces of chamber music ever written. It's the piano quartet in E-flat major, Opus 47 by Robert Schumann. And in 1842, he suddenly got a real urge to write chamber music, and he wrote the piano quartet and the piano quintet and 3-string quartets, and it just poured out of him in waves. And the piano pieces, of course, were for his great pianist wife, Clara. So we are privileged tonight to hear a really superb performance of that, played by artists from our faculty, current and past. And that's how we're going to end our program, with this great masterpiece. So here we are, folks. We did it. We got through a whole year of concerts and kept the music alive. And Jordan Hall is the place we did it. Now, there's a long list of people who should be thanked for making that happen. And I mean people from the sound crew, the video crew, the concert hall management, the organizing of all of these schedules and everything like that. And I think we owe huge thanks to all of them. And I can't mention all of them by name, but there is one person I'd like to end by thanking. Without that person, it would have been much more difficult for me to create these. That man's name is Tom Novak. Tom Novak is about to leave the conservatory after 20 years here. He was just about everything here. He worked in the admissions office. He was a dean. He became a provost. Then there was a period when we were looking for a president. He became interim president. And every time I was stuck with ideas for people and pieces, I would call up and say, Tom, do you have a little time to talk? And he said, sure. I can't imagine anybody knowing more about everything I needed to make these concerts work than Tom. And he always came up with ideas. I didn't take absolutely every one of them, but it actually led me to the creation of these concerts. In tonight's concert especially, when I have represented so many parts of the school, he was the key to leading me to those things. So Tom, thank you to you, and Godspeed. And with that, let's hope that by October we have a normal concert series with real people on stage playing to real people in the audience, which is what it's all about. Thank you very much. Have a good summer season, and I hope we'll all be together in October.